Welcome to Christian Connections. I'm Dr. Ruth Stanhiser. I'm an alumnus of the Loma Linda University School of Medicine. To my left is Dr. Tiffany Priester. She's a cardiologist, also an alumnus of Loma Linda University. And Dr. Nan Wong, also an alumnus of Loma Linda University. Patty Catalano, I don't know what your credentials are, but I know you've worked at Loma Linda for a very long time.
I'm an alumni of Loma Linda University.
She's also alumni.
This evening we have an exciting program with Christian Connections. I'm going to let Dr. Priester introduce herself briefly, and each guest is going to then tell something about themselves before we get on with our program.
Thank you for the introduction. Sure, I am an alumnus from here, and then I went on to do my cardiology training. And I was part of a program at Loma Linda University called the Deferred Mission Appointee Program, where I was selected as a medical student to go out in the mission field. And I chose Africa as my mission field. So when I finished my cardiology training, I actually moved to Malawi and lived there for 5 years before returning here to work at the Loma Linda VA. And some exciting stuff we'll share with you tonight about the work that was started there for the 5 years that I lived there from 2011 to 2016. And then I've continued to go with multiple different groups and residents from here to there for the past 5 years as well.
Dr. Wong?
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure being here. I'm also alumni of the School of Medicine. Not only that, I guess I was also a resident, I was also a fellow, and I was also attending. So I guess Loma Linda has been my home for lots of years. I had the pleasure of working with Patty, who basically knew me when I was a young resident. And as an attending heart surgeon at Loma Linda, we were all buddies. And it's good to reconnect with her. I guess that would be my background.
Okay, well, let's go with you, Patty, because as soon as that's done, I want to talk about some of these interconnections. Go ahead.
So I also went to the School of Nursing at Loma Linda. I have been in the OR since I was a student nurse and joined the heart team in 1976, I think it was, with Dr. Wareham. And I've been able to be part of the training of many, many wonderful cardiac surgeons.
Yes.
So we were talking earlier, and I wanted to mention that when I was a young child, I was very, very interested in mission work. I still remember when Pastor Hallowell came to San Diego Academy when I was in the elementary school, and he told mission stories of being on the Lucero boats down on the Amazon River. I still remember watching in awe as he rolled a big, I guess it was a boa constrictor or a python skin across the whole stage. It looked enormous to me. And I decided that I wanted to be a missionary doctor at that point. I think that you have an interesting story like that as well, Patty. Can you tell us something about that?
I went to Glendale Academy, and in the early 60s, I think it's because Dr. Wareham's children also went to Glendale Academy. He and Dr. Coggin came, and I still remember sitting in my little seat in the chapel, and we could put one arm on only just one arm, not both. And I'm sitting there and listening to Dr. Wareham describe their trip to Pakistan. And particularly, they talked about one little girl that they had done open heart surgery, and it just seemed so amazing to be part of a mission project. So that was what started me off.
So this evening we're going to talk about, or during this session we're going to talk about a project that's going on in the country of Malawi. Dr. Priester, can you tell us how this got started in your mind?
Sure. So I moved to Malawi from 2011 to 2016. And I actually started up a cardiology program and an intensive care unit with support from Loma Linda and Adventist Health International at Blantyre Adventist Hospital there. And it was always something I was looking forward to try to get more cardiology care, more cardiothoracic surgery care for the country. The country didn't have another cardiologist when I was there, and there was certainly no practicing cardiothoracic surgeon. There was always rumors of a retired surgeon somewhere here or there, but I could never get a hold of them for actual clinical work. And so I was keen to continue to go there, to try to elevate the care, to try to train someone in cardiology, and to get someday, somehow, some open heart surgery and some more advanced cardiac programs going in Malawi. And I was approached by Dr. Wong just last year.
Only last year?
Tell me what you proposed to me at the time.
So Tiffany's story is very inspirational. I mean, we coming from an Adventist family, you grew up thinking, wow, it would be nice to be a missionary someday. And obviously, my parents encouraged me to go into the medical field. And we hear kids that say, hey, I want to be a missionary doctor, right? But how often do you actually see someone do it? And I saw Tiffany, I say, wow, you're a living example of what people talk about, but you actually did it. So that was very inspirational to me. How this happened is a bit of a missionary DNA in all of us. My parents were did like missionaries in the Far Eastern division. My dad was a principal. My mom, we all served in the church school. My wife Sandy, her parents were missionaries in Peru, and so Sandy and I always had this desire to kind of serve with a greater purpose. We came back from just a safari to Africa. We've never been to sub-Saharan Africa. That was the first time. So my story is actually a little bit less exotic in that sense. I mean, we just thought, boy, there's a lot of need here.
So let me just speed us up just a little bit because nobody knows yet what we're talking about, I don't think. Dr. Wong, and we'll go back a little bit, but Dr. Wong has, with a committee, has started Hearts for International Mission, no, Hearts for
Mission International. Yes.
H4MI. And I think that Patty has a little something to say about that because it's kind of interesting how all these pieces came together.
So we went to Malamulo, my husband and I, several years ago, and when we were there, we met a young surgeon named Arega, and he said, you know, I've been approached to go to Loma Linda to get training in cardiac surgery. And so I said, if you come, that's my service, I'll take good care of you. And so he did. He showed up at Loma Linda, and he and I became very good friends. And one day we were working together. He was getting the mammary artery out for a cabbage surgery. And we started talking about the possibility of doing a heart team trip to Africa and teaching the African staff some of the skills that we do every day here in Loma Linda. And it was just a dream, but we prayed about it. And then he went home, I went to working, and then a connection with Dr. Wong. He has to tell you that part.
Oh, yes.
Well, after coming back from South Africa, we met with our former colleagues from Loma Linda, Dale and Pam Timothy. And we were just reminiscing, about times at Loma Linda, and we say, boy, the heart team has gone to a lot of places. And I believe they've gone to Africa as well. I said, is there anyone doing any work in Africa now? So immediately Pam say, hey, we just trained an African surgeon. I say, really? And I sort of got out of touch with Loma Linda for a while. I didn't realize that there was an African surgeon that Patty was talking about. And I say, well, who knows the surgeon? Patty. And so immediately we got connected.
I got a phone call one day from Dr. Wong, and he asked me about Arega, and I said, oh, he's a wonderful surgeon. We all were very impressed by the work he was doing. And so I gave him his phone number, and I think you called him right away.
I did. I think this all took place within 2 or 3 weeks. So I was driving down to one of the hospital I'm still working at, and the whole trip we're on the phone. You know, internet really works well in Africa, and it became clear that Arega has a huge heart in terms of serving the people of Africa.
So I'm going to stop just for a minute. Can we say what his full name is? Because he's not here to represent himself.
Yeah. Arega
Bakadu.
Lita. Oh, wait a minute. Arega Bakadu. No. Arega Lita Bakadu.
Yes. There we go. And he is an Ethiopian. He is from Ethiopia, but he's working in Kenya.
That's right.
That's correct.
And I got into the story because your niece, Charlene, was a medical student and had rotated to Malamulo. So Malamulo and Blantyre Avenis are about 1 hour apart. And so I had been there, and now she is rotating over there, and found a little boy with rheumatic heart disease. And he was dying of rheumatic heart disease.
So I understand that in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, that children as young as 5 years old have developed congestive heart failure and died from valvular heart disease.
That's right. There are very few, some places are so rural and they don't have access to antibiotics and diagnosis for strep throat, which is sort of the pathophysiology or the underlying cause of rheumatic heart disease in some patients. And so Charlene then contacted me to say, how can we get this little boy to have heart surgery? And we all said, well, you know, let's get him to Arega up in Kenya to get him his heart surgery. So I'm going to show some pictures. We can put the pictures up here. We raised money here to send this little boy from Malamulo up to Dr. Arega. And that was our first journey trying to get heart surgery there to Malawi. So the young boy in the middle, he's actually a teenager. We call him a young boy because he was a slow growing. That's right. Seen there with his uncle and with Dr. Fikadu. It took 3 weeks in the hospital of daily nutrition to even get him strong enough to undergo the surgery. So he just sat day after day after day eating. Yeah. And Dr. Fikadu sent his girls also to keep the boy company because it's a foreign country and he was, you know, scared. And he underwent successful double valve open heart surgery there in Kenya. And when Dr. Wong called Arega and said, you know, let's try to get this to work in Malawi, then you met Arega and Tenwick, flew to Malawi, and subsequently, after I got involved, I also flew to Malawi. And we actually met the boy after surgery with Arega, and there he is, back in school, doing really well, and we told ourselves, this is our dream. You know, we want to be catalyzed by this. You started a nonprofit organization, and one of our goals was to go back to Malawi and operate in Malawi on Malawians instead of sending them out of the country.
So, you know, God is at work when everything's happening in conjunction. I got this call from Charlene just about a couple months discussing with Rega how we're going to do Africa. Say, Uncle Nan, I'm in Malawi. I said, where are you? I'm in Malawi. I say, we got this boy that needs heart surgery. What do we do? I say, okay, well, you need to get a surgeon. Well, we don't have a surgeon. We don't do heart surgery in Malawi. So I said, well, you know, I do know Dr. Rega, that we've been talking. I got his number. And why don't you give him a call? She did that. Then she also, in conjunction, talked to Tiffany. And the two of you kind of engineer this, I would say, a tremendous effort with the school, well, I guess it will be AHI, with Dr. Hart, organizing a funding to bring this boy, and by the way, he is Young Banda because his first name is actually Young. And so, I mean, it took me a while to understand that. His first name is actually Young. So they got this Young Banda all the way to Kenya, where Arega is serving as a surgeon in another, Christian facility, and took care of this boy and sent him back to Malawi. And that tells me
it's doable.
It's doable, number one. Also, it vetted Dr. Arega. I knew he's a good surgeon. You know, it's very difficult to find a good surgeon anywhere, let alone Africa. There is about 10 million people to one surgeon. And we have a good surgeon all in terms of helping the people of Africa. So it was a huge opportunity.
So this is God working here. He knows Patty. Patty knows you. Your niece knows both of you.
Yes.
That's amazing. Now, the first time Tiffany, Dr. Priester had been talking about something like this for a long time, but it was March of 2023 that people that were involved started talking about, let's do a camp, a heart camp. And they wanted to get it done by, I believe the first dates I heard were September of 2023. And I've been to Africa a few times, and I thought, yeah, good luck. It's not happening. I don't think. I mean, I knew it would happen eventually, but not in 6 months. So let's go from there. Dr. Priester, I think you have something more to say about some of the statistics.
Sure. Well, so rheumatic heart disease is a big problem in these countries. And what we were looking at as a group, I mean, we got together and said, you know, if we're going to fly in and do a heart camp, number one, is it possible? Number two, when could we get it done by? Number three, who would we operate on? You know, we don't have a cath lab. We can't check coronary arteries. There's a lot of things that we still can't do, even going in and, you know, do we have an ICU to land the patients in afterwards? So there were a lot of logistics, but I'll show a couple more slides.
So it takes a big team, right?
It takes a huge team. I'll skip forward and say we ended up with 20 volunteers in the end for the first heart camp. But if we got to the slides again, you know, we decided this really is possible if you have committed partners in a team and local champions, a recipient and progressive nation with relatively stable economy, a cooperative or supportive government, which we had because I had been there before, and so had Jason Blanchard. So March of 2023, Dr. Rega Ficado, myself, and Jason Blanchard, who works at Loma Linda University, he had been a CEO at Malawi Hospital. So Nan had recruited all of us, started this, and we were all now board members of this newly birthed H4MI, Hearts for Mission International, and we got backstopping from ASI. So ASI was helping form this so that we weren't just a brand new
So Adventist Health International, that's part of Loma Linda University, is that correct?
No.
Adventist Service and Layman.
Oh,
ASI.
Okay.
Yeah,
ASI. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't hear it correctly.
So we met with the Minister of Health for the country of Malawi, and we discussed this with her and her team. Here are the physicians in Malawi and the Deputy Minister of Health, who I had taken care of multiple times in Malawi as a patient. So we met with her and we said, here's our plan. We want to come do heart surgery for free for people with rheumatic heart disease. Can we have your blessing and can we have your assistance with logistics? They gave the green light. And so that really started us on the path of getting a bunch of volunteers. It takes cardiologists, cardiothoracic surgeons, a general surgeon, some trainees, anesthesiologists, perfusionists, OR nurses, OR scrub techs, a full ICU team, and some trainees along with a rep to get in there and get this whole thing
And a lot of
done.
equipment.
Yes, and a lot of equipment. So for the equipment, we actually had to crate up some donated equipment here, the echo machines, the perfusion machines, the packs. They all had to get donated or purchased. Patty spent so much time working on this. I mean, just evening after evening, working on getting the equipment put together. And then we actually took the team from Blantyre and sent them up to Tenwick to visit Dr. Arega and see heart surgery front to back on several cases because they'd never seen it before.
So that's up in Kenya.
So that was from Malawi to Kenya for those nurses and the ICU physician. And then Dr. Ficado himself went down to Malawi for a weekend and saw all the patients that had been screened and selected and made the final patient selection for the first heart camp. And then everything finally landed at the airport and was trucked down to the hospital and unpacked in Malawi, make sure everything is working, make sure everything can plug into the electricity and the current that's over there.
220 there, not 110, right?
That's right. And then we flew the Deputy Minister of Health over here to California, where she was able to meet with the whole team. She gave a speech here, one of the global health conferences. So we're really making ties to their government, to our government, maintaining everything that we could, and that's really a key to this process. She was able to come here and meet with all of us and have dinner, and this is part of the first heart team that was going to be heading out for our organization with her for a dinner.
And this was slated to take place when?
This took place November of 2023.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it that they actually pulled it off. I really couldn't.
Well, in summary, it took us less than a year to create a board. And then it took us less than a year to create a team to go over. Now, Patty has a big part to do with that. I mean, we couldn't have gone anywhere if Patty wasn't. Look at all the stuff in the OR. We had to bring everything. You can't in the middle of a case and say, we don't have this thing. Can we call Loma Linda for a supply? You got to bring everything. So
this is the first open heart surgery in Malawi. Thanks to you guys. Patty, who got all those instruments, everything thought of ahead of time, everything you could possibly need. And Nan in there as a surgeon working on these patients, just incredible that this happened last year in November. The first case went very smooth, even though she was a bit complicated. And there was media right outside the door ready to greet you guys after the very first open heart surgery for Malawi.
And I believe she was a 34-year-old woman with 4 children?
Yes.
And she had 2 valves that were replaced?
And an aortic root enlargement.
And an aortic root enlargement. So it was complicated.
Well, and the part that just touched me was that as we finished the case, Areka came to me and he said, we plan to have an easy first case. I know of no open heart surgery that's truly easy. But instead, we had this complicated double valve and this sick patient that needed this aortic root enlargement. And he said, it's God telling us that he's in charge. It'll be okay. He's in charge. And that meant a lot to me. So
I think that I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but that team was a pretty cohesive team, mostly from the Loma Linda area, I believe. I'm not totally sure if that's true. I was accompanied the second team in March, April of 2024. And on that particular team, there were non-Adventist, Catholics, non-Christian, atheists, and I believe
from all corners
from
of
all over the United States. And I remember talking to you, Patty, and asking how it was going. And tell me what you told me.
It amazed me with the commonality of we all do open heart surgery. We all came together. I know the people that weren't Adventist were so blessed. The prayers offered before each surgery, the morning worship just outside our door. Every morning they sang a cappella, "Great is thy faithfulness," which rang in my ears all day long and reminded each of us, no, I don't think anybody went home without believing in God. They could see it so much.
Yes. Let me put a little background to that first patient, because none of us intended to do the most difficult case on the first. This is the first heart surgery patient in Malawi. We had 3 patients selected, and 2 of them were supposed to be easy cases. And one, we found out, was not a straightforward rheumatic problem. We're missing something. We don't want to do a first case and go into the operating room missing something. So we had to delay it because she needed another study. The other one was a young mother who just gave birth to a baby about 6 months ago. And she was frightened. You can just see her. She was shaking when we were talking to her the first time. She's like, and even before that, she just say, okay, we can't get hold of her. Because she say, finally, when we track her down, she say, I don't want to be the first patient to undergo heart surgery in Malawi. So what do we have left? We have left Elisa, the mother of 4. Now, Elisa came from Malamulu, which is an institution very familiar with our Loma Linda institution. Melissa had a very different demeanor. Number one, she's more symptomatic. she knew she was dying. But number two, the care in Malawi is a little different. She has the sense that she could trust the doctors. The other patients are coming from the government hospital in Blantyre. They just don't have the same kind of trust with the people, with the doctors. I could tell immediately that at least a sense that we're there to help her. And she could barely get out of bed. But the night before, when we had to make the switch, she came out and thanked us, for coming over. I was really touched. But we didn't sleep very well that night because, no one really wants to do it's like,
You
someone
wanted
once
an
said,
easier case.
well, yeah, you're setting up in a basketball team for a layup. Now you're doing the three-pointers, right? So we didn't sleep very well that night at all. There was a lot of anticipation. There was a lot of announcement that the heart team's going to do this case. So the next morning, I asked Patty, I asked everyone, I say, should we go ahead or not? Well, everyone just left and went to the OR and say, so
We did what we do.
yeah.
They did what
In
they do.
reflection, Rega say exactly what we felt. I mean, we were kind of not in control of that case. I mean, it's sort of like, well, one of my PAs actually say, God bring us so far. I think he'll bring us through this case.
And he did.
Yeah, he did.
He did, and we have a picture here.
Yeah.
The Deputy Minister of Health showed up just to see the patient, and there she is, just a few hours after the surgery, already without the breathing tube and everything, sitting there chatting with the Deputy Minister of Health about her procedure and what had happened and how grateful she was. And of course, the whole team participated, in everything. Some of the participants here, like Dr. Lauer and Dr. Rega, along joining with some of our local team. So. That picture made headlines in their newspaper. The first 2 open heart surgeries had been completed by the time the newspaper hit out. And we actually did 7 surgeries that trip.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
And there they are just getting ready to go home, some of the patients from the last couple of surgeries that we did. And Patty, tell some stories. I mean, here they are at the 1-month checkup. They're in Malawi. These people, they were happy. They were smiling. They really, I think, felt touched that the Adventist Hospital was doing these surgeries for them.
When we look at that picture, I see the little girl with a red shirt on. It's hard to tell. She's just 15 years old. And the surgeon said, can we do a second case on the next to the last day? Because this little girl is not going to live till the next camp. And look at her.
Yeah, she's the one that we added on.
Yeah.
Just think, we're ready to leave the country. Everybody's getting ready to pack up. And the cardiologist came and said, look, if you don't if you leave the country without operating on this lady, she's not going to make it on the next camp. And I think he's right.
And every picture you see of her after surgery, she has that smile.
Biggest smile.
And there she is with her red shirt on.
Yeah.
This was at the second camp when the patients from the first camp came for their return appointment. The one on the far left is our little Eliza, our first patient. And everybody's
Jumping in the air.
Jumping in the air. We tried not to cry, but there wasn't a dry eye in that whole group. We couldn't talk. We just stood there with big smiles on our face, trying to hold ourselves together because it meant so much to see those patients doing so well.
Yeah, the Deputy Minister and her team, they actually told me on our second trip, that they were waiting to see how things had gone because another country in Africa had tried some open heart surgeries and most patients had died.
10 patients and they'd all died.
Yeah. So they were watching, but I mean, you say we were ready to leave the country, you left the country, but we left one team member for the ICU there until the last discharge.
Yes.
Just to be clear on that.
Well, Ariga did wrap things up. Yeah.
So we didn't leave until the last patient was actually out of the hospital. But so the other thing here is the second camp, like we said, it wasn't 100% the same team makeup. We also had, other volunteers that stepped up that had heard about the camp and really wanted to contribute. And so again, about 20 people it took to run the second heart camp. And we were able to do more things the second time. So we added on some pacemakers through Adventist Health International. We did 9 pacemakers with Dr. Dale Lamberton. And then we also added, so we did a total, I think, 12 open heart surgeries. We had planned about 11, and we've got a surprise case on the second camp as well. But look at Lijelam, he's a trainee right from Ethiopia, and he's in his second year of cardiothoracic surgery training. Came up through the PACS program at Malamulo. So the PACS, the Pan-African Academy of Surgeons, they have a residency that's doing a full 5-year Western-style residency at Malamulo, started by Dr. Ryan Hayton and his colleagues. And so Lijelam graduated from that, got accepted into cardiothoracic surgery, and he's got 1 more year to go. And here he operated on majority of the cases in both the first and second camp.
He's outstanding.
Yeah, he's great.
You forgot the valvuloplasties.
Yes, and we did 2 valvuloplasties with Dr. Brian Schwartz, the chief of cardiology at Kettering, and those went really well as well. The team. And of course, we couldn't do this without the local team. There's Arnes Araujo, fantastic. She was a cardiothoracic nurse, and they've been in Malawi now, I think, 15 years as
Probably
missionaries.
at least, yeah.
She's a nurse, and her husband is one of the ENT surgeons at the hospital, and they've committed their lives to mission work there.
And she and I have kept in touch, and we're starting some Zoom classes with the staff over there. So she really wants to improve their care.
Yep, and tell us about Felix.
So this young man was in school when he got diagnosed with his valvular disease, and he went home and put his books away and quit school because he had no hope. And he came in, he was quite a complicated case. You can see by the look in his eyes on the left, he had a bit of that ICU look. And I know he caused some worry for the surgeons, but in the end, he started feeling better, and he told his nurse, I'm going to go home and get my books out. I'm going back to school. He had hope again, and look at that smile.
A bit on the medical side. So this young man had a congenital valve that was leaking since he was born. So, I mean, how old is he now? I mean, the 20s, as I...
Yeah, he was in his 20s.
Just think of the heart. After 20 years of having a leaky valve, the atrium was twice the size, maybe even bigger. I know Darren and Rega actually did this case together, and they had to reduce the size of the atrium. It was the operation is more involved, but the physiology or the decompensated state of the heart is much more severe. He has what we call valvular cardiomyopathy. Even though the echocardiogram wasn't that bad, but once the valve was repaired, you could see the heart was not functioning that well. And it took 24 hours when the heart functioned back to what it
kind
should
of touch
be.
And go the first 24 hours?
It was a bit of touch and go, at least for the first 12 hours.
Yeah.
So that was a very...
And he had rheumatic changes too, so he had 2 things affecting him.
Right.
And I think we should mention, we didn't mean to exclude anybody, but so Darren Hodgins is a cardiothoracic surgeon from the Tri-Cities area, an alumni from down here, was in my class at the School of Medicine actually, and he brought his wife and his kids along on the surgery, the surgery trip. So he was one of the operating.
Anesthesia is Ryan.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
And
a classmate of yours in middle school, I
isn't
bet.
he a classmate of yours
from Loma
too?
Linda Academy,
Ryan
that's right.
Lauer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was very. He's supposed to be here, but he's
sends his
not only. Yes, he's not only. We couldn't have done it without him. Let's put it this way. But not only that, he's not just an anesthesiologist. He's kind of a MacGyver. I mean, in Africa, you kind of have to MacGyver a lot of things, and he is definitely one of the MacGyvers that we have.
So you're saying that all the equipment wasn't quite the way that you needed it to be in order to function for the surgeon?
Not at
until
all.
he arrived.
You have. I mean, it's expected for things not to be exactly what you anticipate. That's what it is like in mission field.
Yeah. But we had really good team, and that's why we could do some of these more complicated surgeries.
Yeah.
And I do want to show this video number 2 here, where Felix is on his day of discharge going home.
And who was Felix?
The surgical patient that had the congenital mitral valve cleft and then the rheumatic heart disease. So I want to show just the excitement.
I wish we could all have a send-off when we leave a hospital like this one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That was a great day for him.
So you have other trips planned. You've had 2 successful camps, but there's lots of other cases in Malawi that haven't. You have a list. Isn't there a list of patients? And my understanding is that some of the patients on the list didn't make it between the first camp and the second camp. And there's a list, and you're getting ready to do another one.
That's right. We just voted as a group to do another camp in November, and reaching out to more surgeons, especially some here in the Loma Linda area, to see if we can get a team going, a third team going. Some of the same surgeons will go, I'm sure. Dr. Rega has already committed to being there, and so we're going to need another set of surgeons and nurses and ICU team to go with us and do more.
So
more
my
patients.
understanding is that all the people that went were volunteers. I remember one of the nurses from Montana raised her own money by having a bake sale or something at her gym. The person that was in charge of her gym allowed her to do that, to have a fundraising. And I believe everybody were volunteers. Is that correct?
That's right. We're all volunteer run, and not only do we volunteer our time and our money to get there, but we actually have to pay for the heart valves. We have to pay for the packs. There are actually quite a few. We have to pay for the ICU stay and the medication. Some of the drips are pretty expensive.
So you've had some fundraising in order to raise money. How much are they? Heart surgery is really expensive in the United States. So how much have you allotted for the expense of one open heart surgery in Malawi?
We have an agreement with the hospital. Hospital is supposed to cover. I mean, we're supposed to cover the cost because the hospital can come up with the money to cover the cost.
It's a third world country.
It's a third world country, so they certainly donated some of the time in the nursing care facility and so forth. But it costs about $4,000 for the cost. But that does not include the valves. The valves have gone up in price from the first trip to the second trip. It went up from $700 to about $1,300.
Oh dear.
And of course, the first case was a double valve. That's even more expensive. It's like the Girl Scout trip.
Somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 per open heart surgery.
Yeah. So the first trip. Yeah, we're talking about somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000 for the first trip, because by the time you ship everything over, second trip was a little less because the equipments are over there, but we did more patients, so the cost also is up on another spectrum. It's like the Girl Scouts. You go on a trip, you bake cookies, and you ask your family and friends to donate money, so you can go on these trips. And these trips are completely self-supported by the team members that goes on these trips.
Mm-hmm. Now, my understanding was that there were some people that came with other members, spouses or friends of the people, and they were so excited by what they saw that they're planning to come back. Is that? I've heard rumors like that. Is that true?
I think everyone wants to come back.
I think so too.
Well,
So
it was your physician's assistant's husband just came to accompany her, I believe, but he was an anesthesia.
He was designated to be.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, he was,
Okay.
because ICU care is such a vital part of cardiac surgery that and Tiffany actually started the ICU over there, and we both feel that it's important to really staff the ICU arena. So each time we did have ICU physicians to help us
So
with
we
the
also
recovery.
had a couple of fellows that accompanied the anesthesiologist, I think was one of them, and they taught ACL classes, I
Oh.
think, while we were there, right?
Yeah, they had a
Yep, we did ACLS classes. So as part of our development of the institution, we do the surgeries, but we're also training their staff. So we did ACLS classes, right? We had a sonographer along to teach the ultrasound techs there how to do echoes as well. And we had trainees as well. So there's trainee in anesthesiology, trainee for perfusion. And I think what you're referencing is Tuan. So
Tuan,
yeah, Tuan came to do part of the ICU side, but then he, I think, would be considered going back on the anesthesia side.
Not only that, he has gone back to USC and talked
he's
to
on the
all his
faculty at
colleagues. He's the
USC.
faculty at USC, and he's already recruited several of his buddies, or intensivists and anesthesiologists, to support the mission. So yeah, and that's true with a lot of our team members. They have all shared the same desire. My 3 nurses that came on this trip just sent me a
so
card.
those 3 nurses, they were 24/7.
They were 24/7.
They were trading off, I know, because when we would go out to eat, one of them would go home to bed and the other one would kind of take over when the other one had left off. They were working pretty hard.
Yeah. On the first trip, we only had 1 nurse.
Oh, mercy.
And so, but boy, all of them, they will go in a second on the next. So our plan is to do this until a program is established in Malawi.
So what you're talking about is, I think I heard that you were talking about first going in and doing it and then kind of teaching the local people how to do it, and at the end of 5 years, you might still be coming, but you would be supervising or proctoring or bringing continuing medical education for the people in the country. And also, I think that there's a dream of setting up a cardiac center.
It's kind of funny that whenever we set a timetable, so far God has accelerated by tremendously, completely out of our expectation. So I'm not setting any more timetable.
Okay, no more timetable.
But I'm actually hoping that it'll be sooner than later, because we already have a surgeon who's willing to. That's the hardest part. Once you have a surgeon, you can start building these services around.
You have to have a building as well, I think, don't you?
That's actually pretty easy.
Yeah,
It's
we have to-
getting the right people is the hard
We
part.
have to have a building, and then we'd
Yeah.
have to have a little more infrastructure. We need a cardiologist, so we're AHI, Adventist Health International, is sponsoring a Malawian to South Africa for internal medicine and cardiology training. He's got about 3 more years to go, assuming he can get accepted this year into a cardiology program. He just passed all his exams for the internal medicine part. And there's a Malawian that just got accepted to work with Arega at Tenwick for the PACS cardiothoracic surgery training program. So we're trying to develop that part. As we get partway into that, of course, we'll have to be training anesthesia, perfusionist. It is a big
ICU nurses.
ICU nurses. So
OR.
there is a lot of
And
development to
OR.
be done.
And OR.
We can't forget the OR.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, and the reason we do this is the patients. I do want to show one more patient story here. So toward the end of the second trip, all the patients had already been selected, and I want to show a video here. This lady just walked in, and they called me and said, there's something wrong in this person's heart. We think it might be a blood clot, actually, in the heart.
Okay.
And I mean, I took one look, and what this looks like to me, of course, is what we call an atrial myxoma. It's a tumor growing off the center of the heart,
How
off
big
the
is that?
septum. I will show you how big that is in just a second. So it's about the size of a golf ball, maybe slightly smaller, a ping pong ball. Something like that. And this is the main pumping part of the heart that this is sliding down into. Now it's attached, it's not going to fling off, but it could easily block all the blood flow there going across that valve. That's the mitral valve there. And so this is not something where, again, you know, where we could wait until the next trip and maybe
No.
she might not
But
make
she
it.
wasn't even Malawian, is my
Or she
understanding.
came across the border from Mozambique. But at the border, you know, it's a pretty loose border, and the villages there cross over the borders pretty readily. So you say, how big was it? So here it is. Dr. Hodgins getting in to get it out. There's a opening up the atrium, looking down at that red ball, and then pulling it out there.
Yeah.
Coming out, and she did really well. And so we had added her in again as an add-on case, so sort of toward the end of the trip. But this is why we're doing it. This is sort of the passion we have, is to help these people.
Yeah.
She had no hope. She cried multiple times because she'd already been on a wait list for a while. And
She's
so that's
known
what
about
we do.
this for a while.
Yeah. And so what this takes, right, we're talking about all this development. We need to develop ICU nurses, anesthesia, cardiology, cardiothoracic surgery. We don't know how long that will take. We trust God is leading in all of this. You know, it did take us a year when I got the ICU running. I just show some quick pictures here. This is when I visited Malawi, 2010, the ICU space and what it looked like. And Daryl and I, my husband and I, packing up everything we owned into a container and shoving it shut here in Loma Linda. And then we flew over there, and this is what it looked like when we got there, still not ready. And we went through the construction process. We unloaded all of our stuff over there once we got there, and then we started all this teaching. You know, the ACLS courses, the mannequins. This is the first patient in the ICU that we had done in 2012, January of 2012. Patients that recovered from pneumonia, from weeks on a ventilator, and there are very few hospitals in Malawi that could do that. I mentioned Dr. David Saunders, a graduate from Loma Linda Medical School, who was there in the ICU half-time with me, training the nurses and getting things going. At one point, we actually had a transfer in. This is the State of Kuwait ICU airplane. Actually brought in a patient on a ventilator that we received in.
That was the first ventilator patient in the country, right?
To be brought in on a ventilator, yeah, that's correct. And then we, of course, were taking the nurses one at a time or two at a time from there to here to learn about ICU work and to have observerships. And so the nurses from over there came over here. And that's one of the reasons that the ICU could then handle, after all that time, you know, try to handle some open heart surgery, or at least be to the level they were at. You know, what you said is true. Right now, we need a center. We do have someone there that's willing to help us build a center if we can find the equipment. But this diagram just shows the big black in the middle. The red dots are cath labs and cardiology centers where you can do heart surgeries, and there's just this gap in the middle. Look at the size. The center of Africa compared to the U.S. It's just as half the size of the U.S. with no cardiac surgery, no cath lab. So truly a cardiac center is desperately needed. We do have a vision to try to get one going in the next few years to really help this country and to provide sort of God's healing touch to the people, which is how we think we can open doors really to talk about God's love for everybody. That's what we do it for. Patty, can you tell me, like, sort of, what stands out in your mind the most about us doing another trip and getting ready for this?
Well, now that we've been, now that we have people we love over there, it's so much more fun. There's a much more fun factor to it than just, am I remembering everything? Because for open heart surgery, you have to remember all the tubings that hook into the heart-lung machine, all the cannulas that go into the heart. If I forgot the half-half connector that connects the cannula to the heart-lung machine, we wouldn't go on. It would be terrible. So I was like, and all the sutures, there's specialized sutures to put the valve in, there's specialized sutures to do repairs of this and that, and the surgeons aren't particularly patient if I don't have it right there. You know, they're good to me, but they let me know they need it right now. The first trip, we didn't have a place to really put our equipment, so every time that we remembered something or something came up that I didn't have in the room, luckily my dear husband, who is a surgeon himself, would run about half a block down to the building where we had our supplies. But since then, we've been blessed to have a little room just outside of the OR, and we can bring most of our supplies there. It's much better. So, did I stay on track?
The first trip was just, it's pioneer work.
It was,
and the second trip is so much easier because Patty has been the constant here.
well,
I think you've taken care of more patients than any one of us. You're on the first trip, you're the second trip, now you're planning on the third trip. So you are the constant. And that has made every trip so much easier.
Well, and I realize through my life, because now I'm pretty old, I've gone to
Yeah, no.
Saudi Arabia, I've been to Afghanistan, I've been to China and to Africa, always in the operating rooms accompanying my husband, who was the surgeon. But I learned so much along the way that really helped me. I realized God was, all those years, was preparing me to have the right stuff for
And
you.
this time he's accompanying you.
That's right. There is a switch there.
Because he's a general surgeon, not a heart surgeon.
That's right. Yeah. But he had never really been in the room and observed what happens in that room. He was shocked at how we worked together.
Oh, it was,
It was like he just couldn't believe it.
His
So
first time seeing you at work in action.
Exactly.
well, the teamwork is tremendously important. The first trip, we were blessed to have pretty much everyone who normally works with us on a regular basis were on the team. So we were familiar with each other. But what we weren't sure is whether the heart-lung machine is going to work, whether we're going to have the sutures or not. And so Patty makes sure of that, and also the perfusion makes sure of that.
Yeah.
Second trip was a lot easier, but they're all the same people, but same kind of people who has the same kind of relationship, even though we've not worked together. But I know Darren since when he was a medical student, and his heart was so much in the right place. And but it's kind of ironic that it took a mission trip like this for me to actually operate with him for the first time. So that was in itself a real blessing.
So I remember talking to you one evening and asking you how it was going, and there was a nurse sitting next to you and she piped right up and she said, you know, I don't even have to say the words, I just look up and Patty seems to know what it is I need, and she goes over and gets what I need and drops it on the table without me even having to say anything. So I guess that they really were communicating well. It was a blessing to everybody.
Operating room nurses, just our eyeballs can communicate a lot of information. It's amazing because everything else is covered.
Well, Patty, you're also you're not just a nurse doing nursing function. You're also a tech doing instruments and passing sutures. So you are sort of a rarity in that regard.
The old school that we
did both.
did both.
The old school, right? I mean, Patty can literally do everything. So that was a tremendous blessing.
Sounds like they really needed you, and God was preparing you the whole time.
Well, it's interesting to me how all of a sudden when people heard I was going to Africa, my manager said to me, you know, somebody has some packs they're not using. There's 6 of them, or I guess there was 8 of them for our first trip. The packs that have all our drapes and gowns and everything. And so she just gave them to me. Wow. And it was perfect. It was another God thing. And then, you know, oh, we have these cannulas. And the second trip, people from different hospitals brought all these supplies that their hospitals donated. So my supply room looks very nice over there. And with the new cabinets and all the nice supplies. But yeah, it's a work of a group.
If somebody were interested in being part of any of these trips, are you accepting other volunteers? What are
Yeah, we do. We have a website, h4mi.org, and there's a contact us if anyone's interested in helping and volunteering. We mostly have a certain subset of volunteers that we would need: anesthesiologists, heart surgeons, ICU physicians, ICU nurses, perfusionists, OR techs, OR nurses. Did I miss anybody?
No, you're pretty much covered.
That's the ones that we need for volunteers. And you can write us an email that we'll get on that website. Also, you can donate if you want to sponsor a patient for their open heart surgery. You can do that through their website as well.
One other thing is, this is not just a blessing for the people, but the team members.
Yeah.
Everyone who comes on these teams, you can't leave these trips without being changed. And I know it has changed me in more ways than one. So it's truly a blessing, not only to the patients, but to each one of us.
Yeah, I was reading once in a book called Steps to Christ by E.G. White, and it said that there's a law of life for the universe in giving. I mean, I know the law of gravity and but I'd never thought of it like that, that it's a law of life for the universe giving. And she elaborates of how the rain feeds the streams that go to the ocean, and then the ocean gives up its water. There are cycles. But I really do feel that helping others really is truly life-giving for the people that are participating in it.
One of the perfusionist students who's seen other mission trip coming over to Africa, because he's in Kenya working in Riga, he commented he's never seen a team that's worked so cohesively together. I think it's important that we mention some of the people who make it possible. Jason has put all this. Jason Blanchard has really been the administrator organizing this group of people. Randy Bevins, who's the chairman of our board, representative from ASI. He's a radiologist. He's the radiologist. But he was a perfusionist at one point when he was when he was a medical. I can't remember. He'll tell you maybe before he became a medical student. So these administrators are extremely important. Then we have physicians. We mentioned Ryan. There's also Robin. Robin Kim was the first one who jumped in. Yeah, and after the first case, everybody have a sigh of relief because everybody was so high. The tension was high. The first case, and of course the second round we have Dr. Hansacker, who head out the anesthesia, and Darren has brought Dr. Wayne Shu, I believe is the last name. So we got a lot of these very key people that make this all these trips possible. But they are not just good at what they do, but they sort of have the same mission-minded flavor that sort of gels the team together. It's so cohesive. It's just a wonder to watch, actually.
Well, it sounds really exciting. I guess we're all looking forward to hearing more about more future trips. Maybe we can let everyone know that we thank you all for being here for this Christian Connections, and we will be back in the future with updates on this program. Thank you.